Now, obviously, that's not the purpose of investing, to lose money. So for anyone listening that has kind of been waiting for some sign to just have them take action, this is your sign. Go and take action today. Get involved in something.
If you're a residential real estate agent earning $200,000 a year and you want to grow your passive income, this show's for you. Learn the secrets other agents use and hear from experts in our field in order to guide you along your journey to investing in assets like apartment communities so that you can turn your commissions into cash flow. I'm Randall DeCleared. Let's go, baby. All right, Agents Building Cash Flow. Today's guest is very special. His name's Barry Pryce. He was born and raised here in San Antonio, Texas. Got his B.B.A. in business management with concentration in entrepreneurship from the University of Texas at San Antonio. Little golden nugget about him is that he was a Golden Gloves boxing champ. Oh yeah, we're going to get into that and talk to him a little bit about how that helped him out with discipline and maybe some other things. And he bought his first house when he was 19 years old, his first investment property when he was 19. So we can dig into that a little bit. Currently, he is a real estate agent and he focuses on commercial real estate in the San Antonio market. And so we're going to dig into kind of how he got started, what got him to buy his first property when he was just 19, how that experience was so that you can learn from that as well. After he bought the buy and hold property, he went and flipped a few properties. And so we can ask him about that experience as well and what he is working on now. I know from just speaking with him and being in groups here in San Antonio with him that he is actively looking for multifamily investments and multifamily communities. And so we're going to dive into all of that. I'm really excited. Hey, Barry, welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Randall. Excited to be on the show.
Right on. All right. So let's dive into a little bit of your background. I want to know kind of how you got started and where you are right now in the space. Just give us, the highlights of what you want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Always been interested in real estate. My dad took me when I was in high school, took me to kind of one of these weekend seminars, right? A lot of the things that you hear on the radio, invest with zero cash flow and this kind of thing. And at the time, this was, I'm dating myself a little bit, but this is around, between 04, 06, right? And back when the cash policy and lending policies were totally different than they were today, right? And so I was always interested in how do you get into cash flow, but without putting any money down. And so there's always just I've been intrigued by that, if you will. But right out of high school, got into the workforce, became a personal trainer. And one thing I pride myself on, I've always done a decent job of asking people who are in front of me in life, if you will, in different categories, whether it be age, financial status, accomplishments, whatever the case, for, kind of their advice and what it is that they would do. And if they were in my shoes, what is it that they would do? And so after having a decent success as a personal trainer, the kind of consensus was, if I was you, I would love to start building equity in something. And so I had a role model, have you will, who taught me about house hacking. He was like, you're making good money, go qualify for a mortgage, get your college friends to rent out rooms, right? And he's like, you live in the master and you pay the least out of everybody, that lives with you. And, you start building equity. And I was like, that makes sense. And so that was, this was right before '08. Got into my first house and essentially, started following his plan and went well. And fast forward about 8 years later, I decided to graduating college, wanted to move across town, still wanted to be investing, but just in a different space. And so took the equity out of that house. And then I started getting into a flipping house. I had some few successful financial wins, but a lot of more hard lessons learned that I'll take with me forever.
Yes. If anyone has ever rehabbed a house, they know full well the trials and tribulations that go with it. So
absolutely.
I'm curious. Well, I'll ask you some more about that in a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, but did that. And then I guess it was around 2018, decided to pivot from there. And then I went and bought my first duplex, which I'm currently residing where I live on one side. And then I have a unit that I Airbnb out. And
still hacking, still doing it,
just in a different way, right? But that's been great. And that spawned off. I started a short-term rental property management company where I kind of dabble in that space, have you will, right? We currently have 10 units under management. And then during the pandemic, while that first initial 6 weeks when everything was shut down, at least here in Texas, I was really looking for ways to pivot and signed up with this virtual webinar, learning about the multifamily asset class. Got educated on that, invested in my first deal last year passively, and just my intriguing nature and mind, I inquired a lot about it, and I was inquired so much that I needed to sign up for some coaching program so that way I can learn about it more, right? And that's what I did at the beginning of this year, and joined Department Educators. And so that's been a whirlwind in of itself, and working to just qualify myself to join a GP team here in the next 12 months.
Got it. Wow. That is a good background. Lots of information I want to unpack there, but you left out the Golden Glove story. Like, that's one thing. I saw that in your bio and I go, okay, this guy was a Golden Glove champ. Okay, tell me something about that, man.
Absolutely. So in college, I needed to have a competitive edge. I needed to do something, right? And I was ineligible to go back and play any kind of your traditional sports, football, basketball, anything like that. And I love competing and just looking at my skills, interests, and everything. And, I figured, let's try boxing kind of thing. And so I think it was...
UTSA has a program?
No, UTSA doesn't have a program. It was more so just, I had some personal trainer friends that went and did the local Golden Gloves. I think it was in 2012. Yeah, that's when I had first saw it. And I was like, hey, I can do this. And that'd be pretty good. And growing up, my dad would take me to the boxing gym and would have me do the workouts, but would never let me spar or actually get in there and mix it up. And growing up, just kind of doing some backyard stuff with friends, we put gloves on a time or two. And I was decent. So I always had an itch that I needed to scratch.
There you go.
That was my senior year, 2012. After seeing my friend do it, I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and try. And so that summer, I joined up with a local boxing gym and told them the Golden Gloves, at least in San Antonio, was always in February. So it was like May 2012. I set the goal of, in 2013, I wanted to compete. And so took it serious, trained up, and, found a lot of indirect lessons through boxing. One of them being able to control and manage my weight and just kind of just self-discipline of all of that. But when my first fight, I got a knockout, a euphoric feeling like I've never done, hardcore drugs, but I imagine that's the feeling, that dopamine that you get, right? Kind of off of that. That was it. And I did that and had a prestigious goal of trying to make the Olympic team for 2016 trials. And so I competed in the Olympic trials, and obviously was not the nation's representative winner, but I had no regret. I went all for it.
Yeah. Let's say that loud and proud. That's awesome, man. I love you're like, I see it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take off, and the lofty goal you can get to just from jumping into it. Yeah. I was going to ask you about that because you kind of touched on it. I learned a bunch of lessons from it. Would you say now, just looking back on it, would you attribute any of your success that you're having now, I guess, in business, right? Any lessons that you learned? Because I look back, I play football, and a lot of things that we learned, I was like, oh man, coach knew, it was great. The little things matter. All these little lessons that you learn.
No, 100%.
Hard work and effort and all of that. So anybody that plays sports, I always have you get something out of it. So I don't know if you got lifelong lessons out of the boxing side of it as well.
Yeah, 100%. I would say kind of from two biggest things that I take away that I think anyone kind of benefit from that I learned in boxing is it all starts in the mind, right? And what I mean by that is, especially if you're not in shape with boxing, the hardest thing, like anything in life, is to be able to control your breathing. For me, I was never a natural fighter. With that, I would flinch a lot, right? And when you flinch, you kind of hold your breath. And so you start having breathing patterns. And the only thing I kind of compare it to is it feels like you're drowning. And so when you're out of breath, blood's pumping to your muscles, it's hard to keep your hands up. You're feeling depleted more than anything. Our bodies send signals to our brain like, hey, we're under duress. Can we take a break? So your body is giving you all these signals to stop. But if you can take control, mental control in your mind, and just everything that you've practiced and your training building up, right? And you can rely on that. And you lie to yourself and you say, I'm fine, I can make it. That is what's going to get you through that moment, right? And I find it the same way, whether I'm flipping a house or I'm in some sort of negotiation, I'm just feeling stressed out about the deal or just the process of whatever the project is at hand. I know as long as I stick to the fundamentals, I'm going to be okay. And no matter the outcome, whether it's great financially or not great financially, I know I'm going to learn and I'm going to get better just getting through this experience kind of thing. That's been huge. The second thing that I was taking with is that the bell's going to ring on us all. I say that because, the first time, if you've never boxed before, it's 3 minutes. And we've been on talking for close to 12 minutes. And it feels to me like 3 or 4. But when the body's under duress, 3 minutes is a heck of a long time. It feels like 3 days.
Yeah.
And when your body's tired, it's telling you to stop and you just want to do nothing, that bell will ring. And when you look back on it, you're like, oh man, I should have done this, or I should have been doing this. I should have been doing that. So instead of, focusing on how you feel, focus on what you're actually doing. And so that way, when you look back on after the bell is rung, you'll be proud of what happened. right? Kind of thing. And so it's the same way, when you're going through searching for a deal to get into, or you're in negotiations, or you're in the deal and it's not going well. It's easy to just get bogged down on like whatever the challenge is and kind of want to give up. But if you just kind of stick through it, everything's going to come to an end, right? That's the life fact. Microcosms of life and just little psychology tips that have helped ingrain in me.
Again, sports are huge in my background and shaping my life the same type of way. You get a ton of little lessons and you learn a lot about work ethic. I will say on the boxing side and the breathing side, I sparred once and maybe twice, but it wasn't kind of coached session. It was me and a buddy. We got in a ring and we had gloves on. And I will tell you, after like 30 seconds, I was ready to throw up. I was exhausted and my breathing definitely was not on point. But so yeah, sticking through that like a full round, that's something else, man. All right. Well, again, I wanted to touch on that because I saw it in your deal and I think we got some nuggets out of that, how that shaped your investing. So you started, again, I guess take me back a little bit, your timeline. When did you graduate college? Because it sounded like you went to high school, got out, you were working a little bit, and went to college after that. Okay. So then how long have you been actually in real estate? Like how long have you had your license?
So I refer back to when I got in real estate, my first investment property was '08. So I graduated from UTSA in 2013, and it was 2015 when I got my real estate license.
Okay. What asset class are you focusing on with? How do you pronounce it? Uriah?
Uriah. Yeah.
Uriah.
So for the most part, been residential and land.
Okay.
And land, for the most part, being residential use space, been most of my transactions. Done a little bit of commercial and am now looking to venture off more into the multifamily asset class. And I have a two-headed prong with that from an investing standpoint as well as from a broker.
What are your thoughts, I guess, on the market? If you're looking at it from a brokerage standpoint, like what are your thoughts on the multifamily space currently in this environment? From the broker's point of view, like what is it that you're seeing in the market right now for the multifamily space, if that's the asset class that you're focused on?
So right now, I think this kind of applies somewhat in general with real estate right now, but we're somewhat at an inflection point, right? Sellers kind of have gotten used to the appreciation value that we've been getting since the pandemic of the past 2 years, and the cost of capital is rising every day, right? And so I feel like we're at this kind of crossroads battle point, right, of being able to find deals that actually pencil and are going to be, that makes sense, right? Because if it makes sense, it makes money. At the end of the day, that's the purpose of investing.
Have you seen a slowdown, I guess, in new properties coming to market? And do you think it's due to the time of year? Because it always slows down around this time of year. Or do you think it's to do with interest rates or both?
So I think it's a multitude of things. I have seen slowdown in just deal flow in general. I see one is kind of inflation, right? And so with inflation, it's fiscally responsible to stay within a tangible asset, right? Because it's kind of expand kind of like with inflation. So I think you're not really necessarily seeing a lot of sellers wanting to, especially in a multifamily asset class, necessarily sell unless they're kind of in a position where they have to
exit and hold cash that's, being drained at 10% inflation rate.
Exactly. So I think I see that being one contributing factor. And then the other I see kind of being the cost of capital right now. So in just, speaking with other operators and syndicators and seeing how much, from 12 months ago, buying a 2% cap rate was $80,000 to $100,000, right? And easily 10x right now kind of thing. And at that, I think if we back up even further, I think if we're going 18, 24 months, some lenders weren't necessarily even requiring a rate cap. And so just the cost of capital and being able to get things to pencil and knowing that if you're underwriting something, you better stress test your underwriting pretty well in order to give you the confidence that you're going to succeed on the project. So I think it's a mixture of those two things that are attributed to slowdown.
We can touch on that a little bit more. Maybe I'll have something for you here in a second. So, I typically will ask other guests what the shift was from just being an agent to an investor, but it sounds like you jumped in like, hey, I'm going to buy a place. I'm in real estate. And so it doesn't necessarily apply to you, but what's some advice you might give other agents who they got their license and they've never invested in real estate? They're literally just doing the brokerage side. Maybe they want to get into it. They just don't know where to start, or they don't know how, right? Like, do you know anyone like that? Do you know any other agents who have legit just got their license and they have not done any investing?
Yes, I do. And to me, I'm always ever since leaving school, right? Because there's so much information out there. And so it's hard to know who to take advice from, right? Kind of thing. And so I've always took the philosophy of theory, witness, and application, right? And so what I mean by that is ideally the person that I want to learn from is someone who's in the application field, have you will. So someone who's actually doing it and is successful at it. From there, the witness might not necessarily be the person doing it, but their right-hand man, right? And they've witnessed the person from the application standpoint and doing it. And then there's more your theory, right? And that's kind of just your, have you will, like your teacher who's never taught or who's never worked in the field and applied the things that they're necessarily teaching on, but they know the fundamental, coming up for a blank, but the
like the how to,
study
like
book.
how,
The how
high
to.
level stuff, but they don't actually know the real world application.
If they come out of the textbook, they don't necessarily have the application. Number one, I would say whoever you're taking advice from trying to get into an investment space, ideally you want to do it from the application standpoint or a witness standpoint. And that's someone doing a deal and can show you different ways of being able to get into it, right? Whether that be single family, multifamily, and obviously I think there's a Ray Dalio that says, how can I reduce my risk but increase my return, right? Or keep my risk the same but increase the return. Like, so how do I get into those situations? And so I would say that being one, right? Find your mentor and use your witness theory application to smell test who you're getting with.
For whatever type of investment that you're looking to get into. The problem I see with some agents, they don't even know where to start. Like, should they do single family? Should they do multifamily? How do they get into multifamily? And multifamily is it seems so daunting when people are first getting into it. But the reality is trying to show agents is that you can get into these deals. Like you did a passive investment in a syndication, I assume, right? Mm-hmm. So you put money into a deal and you're getting returns presumably. And, it wasn't as difficult as it may be perceived to say, I am now in a multifamily investment. Like I have, 100 plus doors or whatever. Right. And so just, I guess, carrying on with what you were just saying, knowing what asset class you're going after, obviously, then you can pinpoint the person you want to follow. So if you got short-term rental experience, then you can go and talk to Barry, and Barry's like, hey, this is how it works. Here's what I've done. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You had a second point to that.
Yeah, no. It kind of spills right into that second point. But, secondly, I would say it's the second point, but it has two sub-bullets to it.
Knock it out. You got it.
But one is, does the deal cash flow, right? I think a lot of people, you have to have somewhat of a investment philosophy, right? Some people want to, and it doesn't necessarily, this applies to all investments, not necessarily just real estate, but if I'm getting in just because I think if I hold it for 5-10 years or whatever, it's going to go up in value and then I can get the appreciation play or the yield play, right? But I think the risky part about that is that you're worried about variables that are out of your control kind of thing. You don't know, yes, historically, we know that real estate has just appreciated and you're probably going to get great returns on your exit, but that's not guaranteed to be the case, right? But if it's cash flowing, even if it's only cash flowing $10 a month going into it and you're locking it in with fixed debt, then you're going to be fine. Like no one that I know of has ever complained about receiving money from an asset. Even if you sell for what you got out of, at least you have experience, one, that you're walking away with, which is more, you can't really put a dollar amount on that. But, and then two, for your cash flow statements, we're supporting you financially in your time of dealing with that.
This show is sponsored by Ridgeline Investment Group. Ridgeline has a track record of transacting more than $53 million in assets throughout Texas. Ridgeline is currently looking to acquire 100 to 200 unit Class B multifamily communities between 5 and 20 million in San Antonio, Temple, Waco, Tyler, and other secondary markets in Texas. To learn more about Ridgeline Investment Group, visit www.ridgelineig.com. One thing that I talk about as investors, we all have buy boxes and we all know like, hey, this is what we're going after. This is what we're targeting. And as an investor, let me clarify, as us as investors and operators, we have a buy box. And then in limited partners, one thing I try to explain is you need to have a buy box as well. And you need to know what type of deal you are looking for, because you can target tax benefits as like one of the main things. You're trying to 1031 and roll your deals into the future because that's what you're looking for. You may be heavily focused on cash flow. Another investor may not want any cash flow because they don't need any more income coming in on an annual basis. So we can structure deals certain ways that target different investors' return profile needs, if that makes sense. And so I always talk about that because it's important to know how you want to structure your investments as a limited partner when you're going into deals is kind of in the same line of what you were talking about. If you don't know what your end goal is, then it's going to be difficult. But yeah, so we always try to have a long conversation with that. Like, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? So I think I took a tangent there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. I was saying that second part is two-part. And so one, obviously being the cash flow, but the other thing that I would encourage you to look at is just basically your risk tolerance and time horizon, right, with the deal. To me, this somewhat struggled with the passive investment, which is ideal. It's nice, true mailbox money. I put my money in and now I'm getting consistent money back and I get update. But as someone who has kind of always been a go-getter, take charge, it is a little difficult for me to not know the details of what's going on day to day, right? I knew going into this investment, where I am in my career goal, I'm purely in a growth phase, kind of right where I am with my financial goals kind of thing. And so that's what I got into it for. So anytime I feel myself frustrated about not getting updates or knowing enough of the details of the nitty gritty, right? I go back to why I got into it in the first place. But I also knew that I had time horizon and I was confident enough in my work ethic. If it went belly up, worst case scenario, went belly up and I never saw that investment again, I was okay with where I am at in my life to recover from it.
Are you talking about your limited partner investment or are you talking about like flips or what are you talking about?
Being very ambiguous, but yes, I was specifically referencing back my limited partnership kind of thing as how I analyze that. But same thing, the first time I did a flip, right, was, I analyzed kind of like, okay, best case scenario, worst case scenario, I think I can get in and out of this thing within, 135 days, right? And then the worst case scenario, I think I'm going to be in it 270 days. And these are my holding costs. This is best case scenario holding costs. This is worst case scenario holding costs. And can I stomach it? Right. And my first time doing a flip, it was the worst case scenario and it was stress test. But the confidence I took from it, going through it and being able to say like, yeah, I was able to stomach that. And we about broke even. We had slightly of a loss on it, but the confidence I gained for it, I have no regrets doing it kind of thing. But any investment that I'm doing, I'm looking at what is my time horizon? Meaning like, when am I going to need this money back? How much money is coming back associated with it? And then what is my risk tolerance? Is it safe or is it a high risk, high reward kind of thing? And am I okay with stomaching losing it all? If that's what we're up against, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's just investing in general. You should be checking those two boxes for sure. On your flips, I'm kind of curious how it's an interesting business. Like I did that for 10 years plus. We still have some that we do. My wife literally just bought her first one a few days ago and she's in the middle of it. And she already had to fire one contractor because he walked, and all the troubles that I've had many times, she's now going through now. And so would you do flips now? And would you recommend people start there? Or would you recommend people just get into, like, if you're looking for cash flow, it comes back to like, what are you looking for as an investor? If you really want hands-on stuff, rehabbing a house can be very hands-on. I mean, you are doing everything, especially if you're trying to, I don't know how you did it. If you were Johnny swinging the hammer kind of guy, like I did a lot of that, but would you recommend people starting there on their investing journey? Or if they have the means to go ahead and just jump into like a limited partnership where it's very passive?
No, great question.
It's also very subjective. So I get that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm going to give everybody kind of a vague answer, but I think it's the most important answer is that if going from 0 to 1 is huge, right? And what I mean by that, if you have no real estate investing experience, doing something is going to be 100% better than doing nothing, even if you lose out on it kind of thing, because the experience, you can't put a dollar on it. Now, obviously, that's not the purpose of investing, is to lose money. And so for anyone listening, right, that has kind of been waiting for some sign to just have them take action, this is your sign, right? Go and take action today. Get involved in something. Now, with that, obviously, you need to take into account the principles that we just talked about, right? Risk tolerance, time horizon. What are your goals with it? Specifically to answer your question, would I get into flips again? Obviously, it's a deal by deal basis. And if it worked out, yes, I would be willing to do it. When I did it in the past, I've always partnered with folks that have more of an expertise around contracting. And that's your make or break it point, right? It's going to be your contract. It's going to be your biggest key to being success and being able to keep you in budget and to be able to help you navigate the waters of you don't know what you don't know, right? I think that is, in my experience, that's the biggest determining point if you're going to have a successful project or not.
Let me ask you then. So translating that into your multifamily stuff, you say that it somewhat frustrates you that you don't have hands-on, or sometimes you get frustrated because you're like, to me, I take that as you don't get to make decisions. And so you don't have the data as it comes in, and you're not the asset manager in essence, where you can say, oh, well, these things didn't happen. So if they did and I was involved, I would have done X, Y, and Z. You're like a hands-on kind of guy. You want to be involved. And so on the rehab, do you think you would have been more successful if you were kind of like GCing your own jobs? Did you hire GCs, or were you there like subbing things out?
Mostly subbing things out. I did partner with the GC, and it was basically, I was the money and the analysis guy. He was the contract labor management guy, right?
How did you structure that with him? Again, there are a lot of different ways you can structure rehabs. There's a lot of different ways you can structure multifamily payouts to investors. And so telling people how, this may be a good like key takeaway if somebody who's struggling with, how would I ever partner with the contractor? So like, how did you set that up?
Yeah, no, essentially what we did was we had set up an LLC, and between the managing agreement of it is I would front the cash and he would provide the labor services right behind it. And then any profit that we would get, we would split that 65-35 with me having the lion's share, but also bearing the risk that if we lost, if we ended up in the red on a deal, that I would bear 100% of the risk, right? So from him as a contractor, he's obviously incentivized to give us get us in the black. And me, I get to sit back, kind of just put the money up, still make all of the necessary decisions as far as from the financial standpoint and constantly getting updates. I mean, like I said, I don't like not being able to make decisions from a passive investor standpoint. Yeah. But I definitely do not miss having to go and stop by and see the flip kind of on a daily basis to make sure progress is being done. So there's that happy medium that we have to do. But that was essentially how we did it, right? I think if I was going back again, I might do JV deals now that I've learned a little bit about that.
How did that deal work out? Did you make money on that? Was that the only one you did like that with that type of setup?
No. So in that setup, we did 3. And net all 3, we came out positive on top. 1, we broke even. 1, we lost just a little bit. And then 1 we did. Third time was kind of a charm, right? And we did well. Figured
out a little system to get to go. That was always a difficult thing for me. And even now, we have I just flipped a lake house. I just did my office downtown. We renovated. I was in that thing for a long time, but just trying to solve that problem of constantly being there and delivering materials, like having that relationship. If you have one with a contractor, that's a really good place to start. If you know a contractor that is a GC that can put everything together, I would highly recommend going down that road. If you're just starting out, don't try to GC your own jobs. I mean, it's like herding cats. You're running around trying to get people at the job site on different times. So anyway, if you're going down that road, happy to chat with you guys about that. I've done a lot of rehabs over time, but focus more on the multifamily stuff going forward. But when you're looking at deals now, we'll kind of bring this back to multifamily and then wrap it up. But when you're looking at deals now on multifamily, obviously the benefits, the reason that I switched and got into multifamily is just because I've always wanted cash flow. That's the reason I got into real estate, to have the free cash flow, have the money coming in so that we can do the things that we want to do, right? What types of assets are you looking for? Like, what are you trying to buy right now? What kind of deals do you want to be involved in? And what markets are you looking at?
Right now, as far as for markets, looking at South Central Texas, kind of. So everything from Austin to Houston and south below. Right now, the ideal asset class for me is somewhere between, I would say, 150 units and below. And ideally has been owned by individual owners that have owned it for at least 10 years kind of thing, right? Because 1, I think that fits the demographic of decent equity into the property. And then 2, to both broker a deal or put a team together and go and take it down. One of the 2 routes, that target demographic is going to be ideal for me. Just being a new agent in the asset class and being a new operator when I find the deal that pencils, and being able to talk directly to the seller, right? Versus dealing with a registered agent or however the entity is structured kind of thing. It's going to make it easier to get past the gatekeeper. Okay.
So currently, I mean, are you in any deals? You say you have not GP'd on a deal yet?
Not yet. No.
Okay. It's kind of your trajectory.
I'm actively working, right? Within the next 12 months, October 25th, 2023, that sentence won't be the same.
I like that. I love it. Yeah, man. Goal setting and having that definitive timeline is awesome. I don't know if you ever heard of like 12-week year or anything like that. You use any of that stuff? Looking down at my time blocking book in my Brendan Turner put it together from Bigger Pockets.
No,
Nice plug, free plug there. But yeah, it's a solid book. Well, if that's what you're looking for and you're growing into that space, what's your, I guess, plan, right? And like, how are you going to tackle that? Are you focused on capital raise? Are you focused on finding a deal? Because it sounds like you're heavily in the deal search mode.
Great question. So I am more in deal search mode, right? Wanting to, with the goal of being a main operator. I do have a secondary goal of improving my capital raising skills. But with that, basically my plan is just to document everything that I'm doing here as an operator and kind of build a following, build a little audience with it. Yeah. And when the opportunity comes, to raise capital for it. The real estate firm Uriah that I work with, most of the agents there specialize in kind of commercial and land development deals. And so I have a few other agents that have aspirations of syndicating for land development deals, right? And so our next goal is really just to kind of start marketing ourselves and advertising the value that we're doing with the real estate space and with these investment opportunities, start our own capital raise capabilities when it's right. But for the 30, 60, 90-day plan, I'm focused on trying to get as much deal flow as I can.
Got it. I'm going to highlight or elaborate on something just for anybody who's listening doesn't really understand why I would ask you that question. So typically in a syndication, when you're putting these big deals together, you may wonder how they are getting done. Like if it's $130 million, 130 unit deal, that's, a $20 million acquisition price. It's typically not one person going in and acquiring this thing. It can be for sure, but in a syndication, there's typically the operator, the guy that's going out and running it. They could also raise all the capital that's needed, the equity needed to actually take that deal down and do everything. Or the other option, which I was alluding to and what Barry was talking about is, there could be a guy that focuses just on acquiring the deal, getting it all set up. And then there's a capital raise team who goes out and they bring all the equity to the deal so that they partner. And then there's other like key principals who come in and maybe they sign on the debt. So there's different parts to the syndication. And so you can play, I guess, to the point of how you can get into this business, you can play in a lot of those different roles. And you don't necessarily have to be an expert in multifamily acquisition to be able to get into a general partnership on a deal. If you have friends that have a bunch of money and they want to put money into real estate, you could jump in on a GP team if you can raise capital. So just want to elaborate on that just so that people understand that there's multiple avenues to getting into the business. Barry, we're getting deep on time here. I wanted to dig into some of those other things. It just the conversation just kind of goes. And so appreciate you bearing with me there. But I want to end with some rapid fire personal questions, not related to real estate. What is your favorite pastime not related to business?
Favorite pastime not related to business? Great question. I would have to just kind of say, growing up, the childhood memories of growing up. I grew up in Northwest San Antonio, and I kind of like to feel like I'm the last of the non-technology generation that, truly grew up with. Summertime consisted of, I had a biking crew, friends, true bicycle, not motorcycles, that we'd ride around the neighborhood and be home before the street lights were on, right? And all the different sports we used to play. We had an awesome, just park with all of your sport courts, have you will, soccer fields, baseball fields, basketball, tennis, volleyball, pool, everything, right? And so those summers growing up, I would say is probably favorite pastime that comes to mind now.
Gotcha. Same vein. What's the best thing or memory that's happened to you or your family in the past 60 days?
During COVID, I had a distant aunt who had passed. My dad's from Jamaica. And for me, it was really personal just in the sense of seeing my ancestors and how future generations are now here in the States, right? Kind of thing. But with that, my aunt who had passed, we had a celebration of life for her back in the summer. We might 75 days
60,
here, but
63 and a half days out. Yeah.
Right. But we had a really great family reunion that was there. I had met some cousins that I had never met before that lived in the UK. And so that was just really neat to really kind of connect a lot of the dots there and be able to just link, future generations. That was really meaningful and impactful.
Great. Sorry about your aunt, man. That's not great. A lot of things like that happened recently. So
it was a great celebration of life, right? I mean,
there you go.
Fortunately, we don't have a start. We all have an end date kind of thing. But I think it's at the end is we get to really see obviously not literally, but is when you get to see the impact that you had on the world, right? And so that was really impactful. Yeah,
great. Okay. So last one, name one or two people who have been most influential to your success. Big shout out, name drops right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I have to give a lot of credit to my dad, Barrington Pryce Sr. I'm not a junior, I'm the second, but he's the original. I'm the remix. He definitely inspired my work ethic kind of thing. Just seeing his work ethic growing up and always being able to just instill principles in me as far as striving to be your best, right? And not accepting anything less than that, right? And the second one I don't have a personal relationship with, but I will say is Patrick Bet-David from Valuetainment. He has a YouTube following channel. And the biggest thing that in summary that I've taken from him is, a lot of people will say like, oh, I wish I had Elon Musk money, or oh, I wish I had Jeff Bezos money, or Zuckerberg, whoever. And what I've learned with him is I don't necessarily want their money, but I want their ability to process issues and, be able to think like them, right? So That's been really impactful, and just kind of having a mindset shift and knowing that if I don't necessarily focus on these tangible things and I focus more so on the mindset, everything else will come, right? And so I started following him, I believe it was in 2018. And
what's the name of the show again?
It's called Valuetainment. So it's kind of like entertainment, but I would have to put those two people there.
Yeah, great. All right, man, that's a wrap. I appreciate you coming on the show, chatting, and getting to know more about what you're doing. Is there, tell people how they can get in touch with you, man, if they have any questions, if they want to ask anything, or if you've got investments that you want to invite them to, opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn, just Barry Pryce, like my name here. And then I'm also on Facebook and Instagram under the same tag at Barry Pryce.
I'll throw those all in the show
anybody
notes.
To reach out, and be happy to connect.
Great.
And Randall, I really want to appreciate you for having me on this show, because I do have a goal is wanting to bring more value to the world and start getting on more podcasts and things like this. And so you directly reaching out to me and asking me to come on to the show is huge. And so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Great to have you. Excited to have you on the show. And again, just learn more about your journey and how you got started and what you're doing now. So I am in the group with you. So, hopefully we can work together to find some more deals together as well in these markets that we're looking at. That's it, man. Thanks again for joining. We'll catch up soon.
Yes, sir. Awesome. Right. Thanks, Randall.
Yeah, man.
Surprisingly, most of the agents we speak with got into real estate hoping to gain passive income and become work optional. However, only 1 in 5 ever start investing. Most are simply too afraid to start. Once you get educated by listening to this show, you'll be able to overcome that fear and become the 1 in 5 who are finding financial freedom. Don't miss a single episode. If you want to stay up to date, the best way is to make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it now. And we'll catch you on the next episode.